Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is so great to see each and every one of you here this evening. It is, wow, fall's here. School has started. Is everyone ready to go? Because I am not. I'm not ready for summer to be over. Although I still don't understand why they do the whole thing before Labor Day and school starts. That doesn't make any, it doesn't really start, right? Boo, right? And the students, nobody likes that. What are they thinking? It's Michigan, right? Anyways, my name's Nathan Paul. I'm the director here at Wall Lake Citizens for Parental Rights. And this is one of our town halls that we're doing, and the object of these town halls is to provide parents and folks in our area here with really high quality speakers on topics that are really important to them, and making sure that they have the resources they need to have the best education for their kids as possible. So tonight we have a great lineup. We'll talk a little bit more about them in just a couple of minutes. We are live streaming, so say hi to folks. There's some other states here joining us as well. Hello, yes, and all the folks here. So we're thrilled that you're here. Our organization, just so you know, basically we're formed to put parents back in control of their kids' education. I mean, that's at the core of this. We're very, very concerned about transparency and good communication with school districts. We found there's often not that. We're very concerned about school safety. Obviously, we're concerned about appropriate materials being presented to kids. And so we're presenting as much as we can and really working with parents and others, grandparents and concerned citizens to make sure that we can leverage that to have the best education possible. Yeah, Walled Lake Schools used to be one of the top schools in the state. And we've had this kind of consistent decline. We don't want to see that. We love this school district. We want to see this be a premier school district again. And it's going to take work. It's going to take us, right? We can't wait for anyone else to do that. So we're super, super excited about this.
And in doing so, transformed a failing business model to marvelously profitable, and thus financing the continued growth of the schedule till we have what we see now. We're at 76 doses for children between 0 and 18 years. And you can see that the schedule does include the 3 COVID vaccines in the first year of life, but what it doesn't show is the fact that since those were added to the schedule, the CDC has recommended a booster every year, including this year, under the current administration. So when you add the boosters from 2 to 17 to 18, we're well over 90 doses. Okay, you could advance this slide. Okay, and this is all with the majority of those agreeing to the schedule not having exercised informed consent because risk information has been actively withheld from you, the public. So what we know is that since the onset of COVID, anyone questioning the safe and effective vaccine narrative has been labeled with the pejorative anti-vax. Well, this term actually predates COVID, but it became particularly vicious during COVID, as you know. Now, what we do know is that there are 2 groups that have emerged from this controversy. Those who are vaccine aware and those who are vaccine risk ignorant. These are indeed the 2 terms that most accurately describe these 2 groups. In fact, the term anti-vax was introduced by vaccine stakeholders years ago to gaslight anyone becoming vaccine risk aware. So the term anti-vax used in the pejorative is simply nonsensical hate speech. And we need to reject Orwellian newspeak, adopt the proper terms so we can advance this discussion in an intelligent manner. You can advance the slide. So before I open up the fire hose, I wanted to give you some resources to fall back on. And there have been numerous books written over the last several decades regarding vaccine risk. But what I included here, the first 3 are just a few of the books published in the last couple of years that I found to be notable. I want to draw your attention to the second one, Vax Unvaxxed, written by the current HHS Secretary, Robert Kennedy Jr., because that link will take you directly to the book where you can read it for free on your device. So that's a free resource for you. The last one, Dissolving Illusions, I included that, even though it was published in 2013, because it's extremely important. I will be referencing that book later. You can advance the slide. Before we begin, I think it's important to acknowledge this fact, okay? The Congressional Bipartisan, that's Republicans and Democrats, Select Subcommittee on Coronavirus, final report issued 9 months ago to the day, December 2nd, 2024, identified, quote, rampant fraud, waste, and abuse, and exposed high-level corruption in America's health system, unquote. Now, I'm pretty confident that few people in this room would believe that this problem, rampant fraud, high-level corruption, actually began or ends with the COVID narrative. Okay, so this was a 500-plus page scathing report of all things COVID. Now, I understand that it's a political document, and they actually did get a few things wrong. But for the purposes of this discussion, I need to draw your attention to this statement in the report. COVID-19 vaccine was highly successful and helped save billions of lives. Okay, the reason I need to draw your attention to this is because the misleading nature of this statement is critical to understanding the deception behind the entire schedule. So this myth, what is a myth, perpetuates a misrepresentation of the COVID fatality rate that was discredited in March of 2020, right at the onset of the narrative. Within 1 week of that model being presented, it was met with a flurry of criticism from epidemiologists around the world explaining that they used the wrong denominator in the formula to calculate the fatality rate. They used a denominator that was 1/10 what they should have, making the fatality rate seem 10 times greater than it would have been, and was proven to be within 8 weeks with real-world COVID case data rolling in. So you must understand the behavior here is to exaggerate the risk of the illness, any illness. Then, when that harm never materializes, claim that what you offered was the reason for mitigating the harm. This is preposterous. Anyone could claim this about anything without a shred of evidence. And I will show you, this is done across the schedule, and it's only one of the statistical manipulations that are used, again, across the schedule, as I will show you. You can advance the slide. Okay, so there's a couple key points I want you to keep in mind as we proceed. The public has been lulled into the belief that anything labeled as a vaccine is automatically safe. This notion is patently false, as I will show you, because vaccines, like any other medical treatments, must be assessed for benefits and risks, something we call the benefit risk assessment. This is a critical core competency for safe medical practice in the community. And I'll show you how this has been failed. So let's go to the next slide. So this is a table. There will be a series of tables. This is one of a series of tables of all of the vaccines that were included on that original graphic that I showed you a couple slides ago. And this was constructed using FDA data that the FDA used to approve of the vaccine. And what it shows is that none of the vaccines recommended by the CDC for children are based on what are called long-term placebo-controlled trials, not one. And this was all submitted as evidence in a lawsuit against the CDC in 2019. So these tables are all pre-COVID information. You can advance the slide. So not only were they not compared to placebo individually, when the manufacturers combined a whole handful of these vaccines into one shot, neither were the combinations compared to placebos. So the vaccines studied were routinely compared to other vaccines or injections containing harmful excipients. Excipients are additives which are known to be linked to disease. The reason these are intentionally added to increase the inflammatory response and thus the antibody response to the vaccine. In hopes of increasing the immune response, which is the antibody response. But we know that inflammation is an essential function of the immune system. But you know that inflammation itself, gone awry, can and does cause harm. Okay, so this is what is being dismissed. Next slide. So this combining of a bunch of vaccines into one shot brings into mind two issues in the practice of medicine. But we have to be crystal clear what we're talking about. Vaccines are biological products, which are drugs. Do not take my word for this. Let's let the FDA explain this to us themselves. So these are two statements from FDA public information websites. The first statement is biological products include a wide range of products such as vaccines. Again, quote, biological products like other drugs are used for treatment and prevention, unquote, which is what vaccines are used for, prevention. So it's crystal clear what we're talking about here. So the two issues that are very important to understand, the first one is called polypharmacy. When you combine a bunch of drugs together at one time, you get very well documented known harms and a lot of unknown harms that we don't know about yet, but we're certain are happening. The second thing is dose-dependent response. All medicines are dose-dependent. In fact, everything is dose-dependent. Water is dose-dependent. So we know in the right dose, it may be helpful, but as we increase the dose of these products, you may have harmful effects which outweigh the benefit. So it's very important that you can go back. So the point of this slide is what makes the vaccine zealots think that they can combine a whole handful of these into one megadose and inject that at one time into a small child and not anticipate or even be concerned about polypharmacy or dose-dependent effects is not reasonable. We are beyond the realm of reason now. Okay, you can advance this, Scotty. So here's a bunch more. So in the world of science where I live, we know that avoiding comparison to a true placebo is a known way of obscuring differences in side effects called adverse events and serious adverse events in the trials between the two groups, experimental and control. So it appears that the trials are designed so as to create adverse events in the control group, thus obfuscating the difference in side effects and saying that they're relatively safe, okay? So on this scientific basis alone, the fact that there's no placebo, one could discredit the claims of all of these childhood vaccine trials. So I hope you understand that this debate is no longer about data. This debate is instead about method. Flawed scientific method versus proper scientific practices. We cannot use data from invalid scientific trials and draw any accurate conclusions. So we just throw it all in the garbage. Now, in addition to that, all the vaccine trials had only brief safety monitoring. For example, in the case of the hepatitis B vaccine trial, safety monitoring post-injection was limited to a mere 5 days. This is a vaccine which is recommended for every newborn within minutes of life, despite no immediate risk of hepatitis B to the infant. That is because all expectant mothers are tested for hepatitis B during pregnancy, and even if they are negative, and the mother has no risk because it's bloodborne, the child is still injected at birth. Okay, so again, in the world of science where I live, and I hope you live too, we know that shortening trial length, which includes safety data monitoring, is a known way to manipulate trial outcomes. So it minimizes the side effects that would be revealed with longer data monitoring, day 6, day 7, week 2, month, at the end of the month. But in a double whammy effect, it exaggerates the benefits by not accounting for illness that would be detected later at week 1, 2, at the end of the month, particularly with an agent that is claimed to be preventative for that illness that we're supposed to be monitoring, but then stop the trial short. So you can see that this tilts our entire benefit risk assessment away from harm toward benefit. Okay, this benefit risk assessment is a common theme throughout this entire presentation. You can advance the slide. Okay, let's skip this. Now, if I had a little more time, I could show you how they did exactly what I explained to you 2 months ago under the current administration when they extended a meningitis vaccine, provable meningitis vaccine, down to 6-week-old infants by comparing it, if you look way to the right, to another vaccine, not a placebo, while dismissing serious adverse events in the trial. Those are serious adverse events. And in the experimental group is 5.2. That's more than 1 in 20 children, okay? That may not be my kid, but that's a kid in my little neighborhood, and that's one of my extended family's kids, okay? But is rare and insignificant to them, probably because it didn't happen to their kid. So let's go ahead. I want to get to this. I want to show you real-world outcomes of what I'm calling hypervaccination. So this is he looked at thousands of patients, at least several thousands patients in his practice, because he had a fair number where the parents wanted to, delay the schedule, spread out the shots, and he was respectful of that. So he looked at numerous diagnoses and the rate at which the children were returning sick based on whether they were fully vaccinated or partially vaccinated. So this is just one of the pages of data in this trial on the right there. There's at least 15 diagnoses there. These are all kinds of diagnoses, all kinds of allergic diseases, hives, eczema, all kinds of respiratory diseases, asthma, all kinds of infectious diseases, ear infections that all these kids are running around with, autoimmune disorders, some serious diseases, behavioral disorders, ADHD. So this is a wide range. So what I did to show you what's going on here is I took the first graph on that page and enlarged it so you can see what's going on. So the first diagnosis we're looking at happens to be asthma. So as you can see, the children who are fully vaccinated, represented by the orange line, are returning sick at multiple times the rate that partially vaccinated kids are. They're pretty vaccinated, they're just not totally up to the schedule. So now the regulatory agencies would be happy if you believe that that orange line is normal. All these kids run around with ear infections, asthma, food allergy, everything. But what Dr. Thomas showed us is that this blue line appears more normal. And this begs the question, what about no vaccines? Is that below the blue line? Okay, that's exactly what the next trial showed. So, okay, so this is a peer-reviewed, published trial by the controlgroup.org. And this again was submitted as material evidence in a lawsuit against the United States, against the health departments or the government in 21, I believe. So this is all pre-COVID data again. So what they did is they took the CDC data of the incidence of many, many diseases, not just what's shown on this slide, which is like, a composite of chronic diseases. But they looked at all the diagnoses that Dr. Thomas looked at. There's a slide for everyone, and what they show in every one is that and then they sent out a survey to completely unvaccinated parents, or parents of children completely unvaccinated. because I don't know if you're aware, there's about 1 million people in this country who are completely unvaccinated. So that's what they did. And they ran the comparison. They found that the children who are unvaccinated have these conditions, or the children who are vaccinated have these conditions many, many more times than children that are completely unvaccinated. So that's what they showed. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so now to add insult to injury, when trials have shown a safety concern, public health agencies have shifted to rely on post-marketing passive surveillance data instead. So post-marketing surveillance data like VAERS, Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, is known to underreport adverse events, and this is not in the least bit controversial. Numerous studies of pharmacovigilance databases around the world, not just here with the VAERS, have commonly found a 10 to 90% underreporting rate. In fact, one trial from Harvard showed a 99% underreporting. So what this means is that after approval and release of the product, 1/10, conservatively now, 1/10 of actual adverse events that occur in the community ever get reported to these pharmacovigilance databases. So again, in the world where I live, we know that the world of science, ignoring the adverse events in trials in favor of relying on post-marketing data shifts our entire benefit risk assessment away from a known net harm that might be evident in the trial toward a false perceived benefit by looking at this other data that's underreported. Okay, we can go ahead. Okay, so let's do, to show you a specific example of how they're doing this. This is a very specific example of what I just explained to you. Here's the statement, here's the quote. We're never going to learn about how safe this vaccine is unless we start giving it. That's just the way it goes, unquote. So I'm not going to name them. You can figure it out. You can go to this link and watch him say it. So Mr. X, he was an FDA advisory panel member. He is a Harvard medical professor and editor-in-chief of the New England Journal of Medicine. And he made this statement at the Vaccine and Related Biologic Products Advisory Committee meeting, VRBAC meeting, in October of 21, when they approved of the COVID vaccine for babies down to 6 months old. And I don't know, can you click on it so we can hear him say that? So you can listen and watch in horror to him say that. You can't do it. Let me see if this does it for me. Okay. Okay. So.
We're never going to learn about how safe this vaccine is unless we start using it. That's just the way it goes. That's how we found out about rare complications of other vaccines, like the Wlcpr vaccine. And I do think that I think we should vote to approve.
And they did. So this statement is a full admission of provable gross medical incompetence as it relates to the first year medical school benefit risk assessment. That's what we're dealing with. Now, but let's do exactly what he just recommended that we do. Let's do what he said, okay? Well, this is what we get. Okay, first of all, I'd like a show of hands. How is anyone familiar, raise your hand if you're familiar with these charts that look like this from openvaers.com, from the medical statisticians there. Okay, not very familiar. Okay, so what this is a danger signal chart of pre-COVID and COVID era CDC VAERS data. This is all CDC VAERS data put into these charts by the medical statisticians at openvaers.com. And what we can see here is for the first 30 years that this system is in existence, because it was mandated by that National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act, we're running at about 250 deaths reported to VAERS annually for all vaccines on the market. Then I don't know if you can see it, I can see it plain as day. Something extremely unusual happens in 2021. A experimental gene-based treatment gets mislabeled as a vaccine and gets rapidly deployed across essentially the entire US population. And the reports of death after this injection given begin to skyrocket. And this trend is evident in the first couple weeks of 2021 because it was begun 10 days earlier on December 20th. 2020. So this is as you can, so now your government, there's something called the Vaccine Safety Data Link, which is funded to the tune of millions of dollars a year annually, taxpayer dollars, to look for that signal. But because it's hard to believe that it's in their entire job to look for that signal, because they don't alert the rest of the agencies, health agencies, or you, the public, that this is happening. These bodies continue to stack up throughout the year, including children, reports of death of children after each shot, till we're over 22,000 by the end of the year. So the point is, now when surveillance data shows harm, even that signal gets ignored. So, okay, so why don't you go back to the last one for a second? So, so now when independent scientists and statisticians and the public point this out to the agencies, what do you think they say? I think you've heard it. Correlation is not causation. Has anyone ever heard that slogan? Correlation is not causation? Okay, so let's see what the world of science tells us about correlation and causation. So for more than half a century, epidemiology has what's called the Hill criteria. These are 9 criteria for determining causality. The more of these criteria you have, the more confident that there is a causal relationship. Now, the one that I show you here is called temporality. And I show you this one because epidemiologists pretty much agree that, they all agree that this is the most fundamental, temporality. And it's extremely easy to show on this slide. So this is, again, CDC VAERS data put into the chart form by openvaers.com, the statisticians there. And what they show is when they look at these deaths, and you can do this for all of the vaccines, because this one has COVID in red and the flu shot in blue. So when you look at when these deaths are reported to happen after the shot given, they cluster within the first 24 to 48 hours, okay? If there was no causal relationship, and this was completely random, all of those bars would be about the same height because there's no relationship from when the shot is given to when the person has died. So it would be pretty much a flat trend, okay? So this this clustering in the first couple days and then this tapering off over the ensuing days and weeks is a definite indicator of causation. And as a matter of fact, when you get these slides, there is a link there, just published last year, a researcher who's been looking at this data for decades. I think he's written books and many articles. This is peer-reviewed. When he looked at the SIDS deaths, this is what they found with the SIDS deaths, okay? That the majority of children that were identified as having SIDS and died, they looked back, they found the majority had received a vaccine within the last several days. So you see exactly this trend. Okay, we can go on. Okay, so, and then, moreover, an evidence review of adverse events of COVID-19 vaccination by the National Academies of Sciences and Medicine. This is the premier scientific group in this country. Last year, in 2024, did establish a causal relationship for myocarditis with the vaccines. And this is not the first time that they have established causal relationship between vaccine products and adverse events. Also, the committee lacked evidence to reject a causal relationship for many of the other possible harms that they looked at, which was the majority. So although they couldn't prove causation, they couldn't disprove it either. But the point is, the onus is not on parents to prove causation, especially when the policies are coercive, as with the childhood vaccine schedule. The responsibility is actually on public health officials to, at a minimum, disprove net harm, going back to our benefit risk assessment, which seems to be ignored for some reason, when making these policies coercive. That's their minimum. So, in the world that I live, dismissing the possibility of causation abandons our what we call precautionary principle of medicine. You do it, you know it as first do no harm. Straight out of the Hippocratic Oath, presented to us 2.5 millennia ago by the father of medicine, Hippocrates. You can advance. Okay, we're going to skip this one because it gets quite dishonest. Okay, so where are we at right now in 2025? When data discredits public health recommendations, excuse me. Okay, I didn't advance. Okay, so this is where we are. The majority of public health agencies, that's FDA, CDC, NIH, this is your local health department, which you filed suit against, thank you, in 2022, no longer conduct a proper benefit risk assessment regarding the recommendations, okay? So the FDA itself uses wrong industry standards for determining efficacy and safety, which are harm outcomes. And this was testified to by the esteemed Yale medical epidemiologist, Dr. Harvey Reish, MD, PhD. His PhD happens to be in mathematics, which makes him highly skilled and credentialed as a medical epidemiologist. And then we have scores and scores of audio and video recordings at various websites where of FDA officials themselves admitting to no statistics attesting on adverse events and casually dismissing vaccine injuries. So those are the two links where you can watch and listen to these actual recordings of them in horror. We're going to skip this one and we're going to go to the next one. Okay, so officials now rely on safety and efficacy claims made by biased for-profit pharmaceutical companies which have captured the regulatory agencies. And we have had peer-reviewed published medical literature detailing how, in regards to the COVID injection, any US trained physician who administered or advised a patient to receive that injection failed 2 core competencies required for licensure and safe medical practice in the community. Those 2 core competencies include basic interpretation of the medical literature, how to conduct a benefit risk assessment on a new product, and secondly, adherence to medical ethics, which is respect for autonomy and affording the patient the ability to exercise informed consent or refusal to a treatment. We can go to the next one. And there's some links to those too when you get those slides. I'm going to skip this one. I'm going to skip this one. None of this is theoretical, these adverse events. We know the mechanisms. This is all pre-COVID, well-established immunology. So none of these, the mechanisms are well understood. Let's go to the next one. I'm not going to go through it in the interest, or we're doing pretty good, aren't we?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to slow it down here then. I'm trying to rifle through this. Okay, so From a scientific standpoint, you should know, from a scientific standpoint, the current vaccine model, which relies primarily on the development of antibodies, is a questionable paradigm. First of all, it ignores the first major division of the immune system, which is called the innate immune system. So we have a whole bunch of other type of white blood cells that fight infection. The production of antibodies is in the adaptive immune system, but also within that system, it de-emphasizes the other critical component of that system, which involves T-cell mediated immunity, which is upstream from antibody production. It's virtually immediate. Antibodies take days and weeks to develop. But it also importantly ignores something called vaccine-induced antigenic drift. And this is how common respiratory infections, for example, continue to mutate around these vaccines such they become ineffective, and then you're told you have to get a booster every year to keep up. And you know all the times where they said, well, the shot this year didn't match, okay? So this is a failed paradigm. And it's also important to note that the understanding of these other facets of the immune system offer currently available, more effective, and less harmful alternatives to vaccination. So this is like putting all of our eggs in one basket to the tune of billions of dollars a year annually, an unproven program, while ignoring thousands, tens of thousands, serious adverse events annually, including death. Okay, let's go ahead. Okay, I thought you might be interested in this one. So this involves shedding. I've seen so many questions about shedding over the last several years and concerns about shedding. This is a real phenomenon, okay? It's well established in the medical literature. So I'm sure the agencies would like you to believe that there's an uptick in a lot of these infections after the kids go back to school in the community, right? But I will have you know that there is another scientific explanation for this. So it turns out during August and September, the schools fill with freshly vaccinated children carrying what are called live attenuated virus vaccines. These attenuated vaccines are shed and transmitted to other children at school or home, and this is not controversial. This is well-established science. For example, the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine sheds from those vaccinated kids to other people for up to 3 weeks. Chickenpox, up to 6 weeks. Flu mist, the flu vaccines, up to 4 weeks. And rotavirus, up to 4 weeks. And you should be aware that the oral polio vaccine was removed from the market a couple decades ago specifically for this reason, shedding. They found that after giving the oral polio vaccine to children, other children were getting polio-like syndrome, serious neurologic events, from the shedding. And that's the specific reason that it was pulled off to the market. Okay, we can go to the next one. So I would like to shift gears to the moral as opposed to the scientific aspect of this controversy, which is what really interests me. So coercive vaccination policies violate our most important of our 4 guiding principles of medical ethics. And this is well agreed upon among medical ethics. Respect for patient autonomy, personal autonomy, which is derived from free will. And it should be noted that free will is a biblical truth ordained by God, and there's no controversy among biblical scholars regarding this. It's laced throughout the Old and the New Testament. But I understand that not everybody thinks the way that I do. So, even for those not ascribing to a traditional biblical worldview like me, and aside from established medical ethics, which I can give you numerous references, which I just mentioned, common human decency alone grants the right to any member of a free society to refuse participation in an obligatory health or life lottery. So that's a pretty bold statement. Let's look at that. Let's go to the next slide. So obligatory. The vaccine risk unaware, will be a little more diplomatic here. The vaccine risk unaware argue that the program should be obligatory based on a perceived public health benefit. But we know that perception is not equivalent to reality. And skewed perception can lead to delusion. So when individual health is sacrificed, public health becomes an illusion. So requiring solidarity for the collective, public health, devalues the dignity of the human person. And this is where Christians can draw on our powerful Christian principle of subsidiarity, which protects us against all forms of collectivism. It places limits on all forms of collectivism because the potential abuses of power that are inherent to collectivist behavior and ideology. So what I'm saying is public health is built on a foundation of individual health. Now, if public health starts to undermine individual health, individual choices, parental rights, then that foundation begins to erode such that the whole structure can collapse. That's what we're talking about here. So let's talk about lottery. Instead of giving your money for a lottery ticket, you are offering your body for a chance of maintaining health, that is avoiding illness, but this time in exchange for the risk that that syringe is not filled with the next serious adverse event, including death. And I'll have you know that, go back, this principle of subsidiarity is actually embedded in statutory law across Western society. In this country, it is embedded in the 10th Amendment of the Constitution. So this is actually secular principle as well, but it's derived from biblical teaching. And this is all being done with no true informed consent. So how so? The harms of the product have been minimized or ignored, as I've shown you. The benefit of the product has been exaggerated, and the risk of the illness has been exaggerated. So how so? Well, we know over the first half of the 20th century, all of these illnesses were declining rapidly, drastically, for many, many reasons, including improved sanitation, including sewage disposal, water drainage, drinking water treatment, personal hygiene, increased washing of clothes and bed sheets, reduced overcrowded living conditions, sleeping in separate beds, and improved nutrition. And in addition, we've had more effective treatments, including antibiotics and other treatments. So let me show you this graphically on the next slide. So this is from this book, Dissolving Illusions, written by Dr. Humphreys, and that I referred to on the resource slide. So and this is all public health, federal, state, and local public health data of the incidence of these diseases. This one's for measles, but she reproduced it for virtually all of the other vaccines. And what we see over the first half of the 20th century, that all of these diseases were declining long before they introduced a vaccine for them. So the history that you will not find on the public health web pages is this. They won't talk about this history, but they are happy for you to know this and on. So they can say, look, the shot was here and then we got to here. When it looks like we were trending there the whole time, with or without the shot. Okay, so I think this, you can advance it. This was pretty heavy. I wanted you to have some key takeaways from this presentation. Number one, fact. Vaccines are not properly studied and risks are highly underreported. Number two, fact. The majority of public health officials no longer conduct a proper benefit risk assessment. Three, public health policy fails when individual health is sacrificed for some perceived greater good. What the WHO, WHO, and the CDC currently market as One Health. What I've identified as a health lottery. For fact, public policy based on misunderstood risk, heightened fear, and coerced participation leads to poor outcomes. And there's an excellent scholarly article on this subject in relation to the COVID narrative. You can go ahead. So any medical treatment with risk must not be coercive. Where there is risk, ethically there must be choice. Number six, any narrative or policy involving coercion or fear of pandemic, fear of COVID, fear of any illness, should trigger a full stop and reevaluation for some ulterior motive or deception. So bring down the fear, re-engage critical thinking. Number seven, fact. The bipartisan select subcommittee on coronavirus recently identified, quote, rapid fraud, waste, and abuse and exposed high-level corruption in America's health system, unquote. It is naive to believe that this problem began or ends with the COVID narrative. Next slide. Fact. Bipartisan coronavirus final report also stated, quote, public health officials often, not sometimes, often spread misinformation, unquote, including about vaccines. 10, fact, leaving any malfeasance aside, peer-reviewed medical literature now details widespread medical incompetence in the area of vaccines, specifically vaccine knowledge and administration. I would refer you to my peer-reviewed article on that. 11, there is a dire need to return legitimate science and integrity back to public health. And finally, there's a dire need to assimilate new information in order to assess the validity of our models and reject the science is settled delusion. In this case, the ideology of what I'm calling vaccinism. So I want to thank you, Walled Lake citizens, for parental rights. I want you to consider that vaccination, that this subject, vaccination and vaccinism, extend well beyond the realm of science and beyond the realm of reason and reality and beyond the realm of morality. So God bless you. You can say, God bless you. And I pray that His word give you discernment as you approach this ritual of vaccination going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vella. Absolutely fantastic. I want to definitely say thank you. We're going to do a Q&A afterwards, but we're going to invite Connie Johnson in just a moment to come up and share a little bit more, because Dr. Vella just gave us a ton of information. And I know for some of us it might be new information. It might be a little bit like drinking from a fire hose. But either way, it was fantastic. So I want to do some, let's just stand up and give him a round of applause and stretch the legs out. Thank you, Dr. Vella. Thank you. Stretch it out because it helps your brain work if you stand up and move. So thank you, Dr. Vella. And then with that, I want to invite Connie Johnson up. You guys can have a seat again. Connie is a friend of mine. She actually, I don't know if you know this, but she helped us early on. She was involved in all of this we were doing here at Wlcpr and Great Education Initiative. She's been around with Michigan for vaccine choice for about 10 years now, right? Yeah. And you've been involved in everything. She's been a board member. She's been involved in the media. I think you're the director of media and public relations and all the rest of that. But the biggest thing is that she is an expert when it comes to understanding how to deal with the legal side of this. So Michigan for Vaccine Choice is one of them that has been bringing lawsuits and fighting with the government with regard to this, but specifically with schools. So again, it's up to you as a parent or grandparent if you know the children are going to get vaccinated or whatever. But if you choose not to, there is a tremendous amount of pressure that comes from the schools to say you got to do this in order to come. And if you choose not to, there's actual ways to do this that are effective. And you've dealt with this in your own life, not just from a theoretical standpoint. So again, thank you, Connie. Welcome.
You can go ahead and go to the, thank you. So, by show of hands, who has heard of Michigan for Vaccine Choice before? Okay, great website, so I want to just push that immediately. MichiganVaccineChoice.org. It's not up there, but we'll go through it. And if you like information, there are some QR codes coming up, so you'll be able to access information just by clicking on a QR code. So Michigan for Vaccine Choice is a 501c3 organization. It is a volunteer-led organization. We work with parents, we work with legislators, we work with other really awesome nonprofits and community awareness groups about all things for vaccine choice. And you can scan that QR code, that'll take you right to our website. Just a quick disclaimer, I'm not an attorney. We're not a legal organization. This is for informational purposes only. If you are in a situation that you do need legal counsel, we can help you find that. What should you know about Michigan vaccine laws and regulations? Lots. Let's go on into it. So here's some QR codes. When it comes to Michigan law, and this is for K through 12, daycare included, so daycare and preschool, all the way up through 12th grade, that we have some really great laws that protect your rights to exemptions here in the state of Michigan. We have the medical, religious, and other, which is the philosophical exemption. And those are found in the public health code, the revised school code, and in two different areas in the revised school code. We're gonna do a Q&A after.
I'm just gonna tell you, the one on the right, it says it's been deactivated for some
Oh,
reason.
okay, well,
Just like-
I'll make sure that you get the information
Thank you.
afterwards, so, if you're getting faulty information. Thank you for letting me know, okay. So these are the three different statutes that involve vaccine choice when it comes to exemptions for going to school. You can go ahead. So what does the public health code say? 333.9215. This is the law here in the state of Michigan for medical and non-medical exemptions. And I'm being very specific in my verbiage because an exemption is not a waiver and a waiver is not an exemption. And as we go on, you'll understand the significance of this more. So if you have a medical exemption, you get that directly from your doctor, you hand it to the school, it becomes part of the child's educational record and it's protected by FERPA. End of story. When you have a non-medical exemption, you, the parent, write a statement that say, I can't vaccinate because I have objections to it. That is all that the law requires. You take that written statement, that is your exemption, you hand it to the school administrators, it becomes part of the child's educational record and is protected by FERPA. But something else happened and we've got this great organization or bureaucracy called Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, which promulgated a rule. Go ahead. So an administrative rule, if you're not aware, is officially promulgated agency regulation. It's got the force and effect of law. What they are supposed to do is to clarify an ambiguous law. As you saw from the previous slide, that the law is completely clear, utterly unambiguous. So when we go on to the next slide, this is the administrative rule, 325-176, Section 12, which says, when presented with a medical exemption, religious or other exemption, the administrator of the child's school or operator of the child's school program shall recognize the exemption status of the child. That's pretty clear, right? That's what their rule says. However, then they go on to say, with a non-medical exemption, then you have to kind of go through this rigmarole of getting it certified by the health department. That sounds specifically to me like above and beyond what the law requires, right? We call that overreach, right? That's government overreach. Next. So what we're experiencing here in Michigan, and this has been in effect for the last 10 years, and it's gotten worse and worse every single year, is we have the local health departments and MDHHS handing out guidance that says you have to have a waiver to go to school. Additionally, we have legal companies that are writing the board policies for these schools that are ignoring 333-9215 and talking about the rule and going to the health department and requiring a waiver for enrollment, participation, and attendance at school. So in the state of Michigan now, all over, we've got reports of schools that are saying, we don't take your exemption. We don't have to. You have to go get a waiver. So they're violating your right under the law, religious or otherwise, of an exemption, right? We're hearing a lot about that at the federal level right now, that President Trump is saying we have to recognize religious, it's not even an entitlement, it's a religious right. We have schools that are telling parents they have to have a waiver. Some students aren't allowed to enroll or attend that first day. And we actually have a parent whose child was excluded, a healthy high school boy, enrolled in school in September. The father said, I see what the law is. I'm following the law. Here's my exemption. They took the exemption. They enrolled the child. The superintendent then came back and said, the health department tells me that we're going to lose funding if you don't go and get a waiver. So it's a coercive effort to hold the schools accountable to this, and it's a misrepresentation of the law that's being cited. So what the local health departments are doing when they do go in for the waiver, when you do make an appointment, they're allowing this misrepresentation that the waiver is your exemption and your exemption is your waiver. They're like, oh, it's the same thing. They literally will tell you that it's the same thing. It is not. Your exemption, you have a universal right to an exemption, and that's supported by the law that we have, that you've already seen. A waiver is an internal administrative process made for the health department to do their bookkeeping. It's got nothing to do with you. But, so when you do go into the health department, we have this thing called MICR. Raise your hand if you know what MICR is. One person. MICR, Michigan Care Improvement Registry. This is the vaccination tracking system that's in the schools. So this is the reporting method that the schools use. It's built and maintained by the state of Michigan to track vaccinations, and it was originally created for doctors to be able to report vaccinations to the health department, to Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Now it's in the schools and it's tracking your kids. Oh, and they also rolled out a portal, so all those people that got the COVID vaccine now they're in the MICR too. So when you have data tracking, you have privacy rights under the law, okay? That's no different than with MICR. What they are doing is forcing the parents to come into the health department. They're saying, give us all of your data. They're creating an electronic health record in some instances for not just the student or the child, but also the parent. So they're creating an electronic health record and they're uploading it into the MICR without your knowledge or consent.
Oh, no.
And then they're failing to provide you with an opt-out information that's required by law. So you can opt out of MICR. You can opt your child out of MICR, and it's super easy. Go ahead to the next. So this just tells you a little bit more about the specificity of the subject to confidentiality and disclosure requirements in section 2637 and 288 for the registry. So they're very specific laws that protect privacy when you're dealing with MICR. Go ahead to the next slide. So Michigan for Vaccine Choice, we've dealt with this particular issue with this promulgated rule for a decade now. What it's going to really require is some finessing, either from a legislative standpoint or a legal standpoint, for this rule to be rescinded or annihilated in some way, shape, or form. This is what we've been working on. We've been working with our legislators. We've got legislation that's in committee right now. I'll put up some more QR codes in a few minutes. We did an action alert, and we do a lot of action alerts. This is when you become a member of our organization. We send you an email saying, this is going on in our state. This is really important for you if you've got a child in school or you care about vaccine choice. Could you please go click on this button? We've got a really easy way for you to click a button. If you want to personalize whatever the message is, you can do that, but please go and do this. So that's what happens when you're a member. So we did an action alert for petitioning the Department of Health to rescind the rule, and you know what they said? Our rule is great, we don't need to change it. So we're declining. And then there's a budget bill that just came out, and there's some really great specific language that annihilates and says no more waiver sessions. There's this wonderful person, Dr. Remington Nevin, who is the medical director for the St. Clair County Health Department, who also has an advisory business on the side. He's amazing, and he and I talk all the time. He wrote a memo as his position as the medical director, stating that the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services has been inappropriately interpreting the law and how the promulgated rule has been applied. So he's kind of going out on a limb in this regard to kind of set them into motion for the administrators to understand how this is violating your rights and violating the state law. And then we just had an attorney, Matt DiPerno, write a legal letter on behalf of Michigan for Vaccine Choice that parents of our organization were able to hand into their school and like, here's my exemption, here's my letter from this attorney that tells you that you have to accept it. So this is some really good stuff that we're doing. I'll go ahead next. Here's our action alert. If you want to go to our actions, one of the things like the budget bill with the specific language is going to be in there. But we've got House Bills 4552, 4553. So anytime you can take action to contact the administration or your legislators, that would be an action alert. Okay, so House Bills 4552 and 4553 were introduced by this wonderful representative, Jim DeSena, and what they do is amend the Elliott-Larsen Act, which is our Civil Rights Act here in the state of Michigan, to make vaccination status a protected class. So that's like really awesome. There's another bill that's not up there, but it's on our website that would actually rescind the rule as well. There is the petition that's still active, and then the telling the department to stop their overreach with the budget bill. Those are like several different action alerts that are still active. So if you're interested, you can go check it out. This is the language of the budget bill. And this is why it's critical that everybody contact senators, because they do not have a majority. And while this language passed in the House version, it will come to a head with the Senate. Well, and it's good language, you know. It says, you know, that waiver, just make it available online. You know, like before the promulgated rule was passed. That's how we did it. That's all that's required. It's just a data grab. They're just trying to, you know, collect all your data. So, and this is, you can check out the QR code again. This is on our blog on the website, but this is the entire memo from Dr. Remington Nevin, which is amazing. It's a very long read, but it's very well cited. So I highly recommend, if you like this type of information, go check it out. And go ahead next. And
No, she's in.
yep. Sorry. So this is it. Just go to the website. Just go to the website. You have to be a member in order to gain access to Matt DePerno's legal letter, but I highly recommend, even we have paid memberships, we have free memberships, we call them community memberships. So if you're like, I can't afford another membership, just become a free member. You can sign up for our newsletter or the action alerts, and we'll keep you informed. Go ahead. And if you have experienced a waiver appointment and you feel like your rights and the disclosure, your privacy wasn't respected, that's my email address, media@michiganvaccinechoice.org. Reach out to me and I'll follow up with you to get a questionnaire so we can maybe help you with some of the issues. So it's just a summary of the current vaccine registry in Michigan, all the things that it does. You know, the bottom line is you have a right to be able to get an exemption for your child without feeling violated, coerced, or shamed, and that's not happening in Michigan. Our hope is that it will be happening again here really soon, but we need everybody to recognize what the law is so that when we stand on it, we can stand firm, right? And it's all to make American children healthy again. Thank you. Okay.
So first of all, I want to say thank you to Connie, because I think this is one of the things that is often missing, is like, what can I do next, right? If I'm hearing Dr. Vella right, and I have some decisions that I'm making in my own family, how can I deal with a bureaucracy that's not friendly?
Right.
And so we've got to really be paying attention to that. So this is an incredible resource here. Dr. Vella, can you come up as well? Because I want to make sure, you may have a lot of questions for either one of them about some of the data, some things you've heard in terms of just in the media, or just some questions about what's my next step on this. And I think that, yeah, go right ahead if you have any questions for anyone. Yes?
This is for Dr. Vella. Are there any studies out there that some of the vaccines that children can receive during childhood are causing later diseases, like in adulthood?
Yes, there are. And actually, there is some evidence out there that suggests, I believe it's the measles vaccine, but I believe it's in the MMR, that could actually, the immune changes that are caused could lead to cancer later in life. So there's the whole SV40 question. Have you heard about SV40, simian virus 40? So simian virus 40 was found to be contaminant in the original polio vaccines. And this was late 50s, and they got it out of there by the early 60s, but an NIH or an HHS whistleblower by the name of Judy Mikovits, who was working on the vaccine program, blew the whistle that it's still in there, the various elements of it. And some believe that the rise in cancer may be contributed to by vaccines as well as other toxins in our environment. So I can't give it to you off the top of my head, the studies, but yeah, there's plenty of links. What's happening is on the one slide, I wasn't able to get into it, the science, is what's happening. There's a well-established immunological phenomenon called immune imprinting. Also, it was coined originally as pathogenic priming, but it's now called immune imprinting. So these immunological responses that we are getting from these vaccines are not what would occur naturally. And we're basically injuring the immune system one shot at a time, because normal immunization, as God designed it, is not being allowed to take place. So it's throwing a wrench into the system, and that's what's happening. Immunological.
So I have a question, real quick. And this is not a quick answer too, but let's say I've taken it, one of these, right? I've been injured, or I've got a child that's been injured. Is there anything I can do to like detox, or is there anything that's kind of working with that to kind of help battle some of the symptoms that might be coming from that?
Yeah, so this is all over the place. So this is new territory, but I mean, Dr. McCullough at the Wellness Company has a protocol. You can go to that. It's a triple therapy using bromelain, curcumin, and nattokinase, which helps to break down the clots and the spike protein. Another good source is the Independent Medical Association. This was the FLCCC before they changed their name to Independent Medical Association. They have a lot of good information on their website, free information. It's all free. And then World Council for Health is another good website that was founded over in Great Britain. They've got protocols for detoxification on there. So there's a lot of stuff.
Are all those primarily COVID related detox, or is there other stuff for?
Those are COVID related detox. So this is going to be the next emerging area, okay? Because it's going to be a matter of survival going forward. We are so bombarded every day in our food, the products, we're constantly taking toxins in. It is going to be a matter of survival going forward to continually detoxify what's coming in. So this is going to be an emerging area. It's going to be a big area in the future.
I think you had a hand up over here.
Yes, for you, sorry,
Connie,
yeah.
Are the only two ways for you to get a waiver is religion or a medical condition?
Okay, so
Well, let me
this
just
is what
repeat
we're
the question,
talking about.
just so they can hear too. So the only two ways are they religion or medical exemptions to get a waiver?
So we have all three exemptions in the state of Michigan. So we're talking about exemption, that's your right under the law. Medical, religious, or other, which includes like a philosophical.
They don't have stuff.
The waiver is what you get from the health department. That is their administrative process. It's got nothing to do with your exemption. So you have the right to an exemption. Pardon me?
You have this lesson of choice when you're there with.
They try to force you
Oh, yeah.
to choose whether or not it's a medical.
But the problem with the
or
medical
philosophical.
is they're going to have to show some medical
Well,
evaluation, right?
Medical
Where's the
doesn't happen at the health department. It's religious or the philosophical.
Right.
So they try to choose you. You don't have to discuss any of it. And they know that. We've got years of them coercing parents, wanting to talk you out of, well, the Catholic Church says vaccination is okay, because they say so, but like, no, that doesn't coincide with my deeply held belief. So they want you to explain they don't have the right to do that. It's not in their scope of practice, and it's illegal.
So Dr. Vella, I just want to thank you for the incredible dedication and work. And I know it's, come at a personal hit to you, so thank you so much for that. But I have, kind of like it goes into two questions. I'm really concerned to hear about the amount of shedding that's happening. Is there any way for us to protect unvaccinated children? I can then go in, maybe you might be able to answer both. And then my other question is also in regards to shedding. Is there a direct correlation between the chickenpox vaccine and the rise in shingles that we're seeing?
Definitely.
So let me just repeat the questions again. So with regards to shedding, is there any way to protect kids that haven't been vaccinated from that? And then second, is there a correlation with the chickenpox vaccine and shingles?
Okay, the shedding, it's avoidance, okay? If you know your neighbor's kid got vaccinated and your son wants to go over and play with them, ask them when they got it and wait, so many weeks, it's just avoidance. There's no other way. But people shouldn't, we know this is possible, we know that it happens, but the risk is much lower than if they actually have the illness, because if they have the illness and they, cough in your face, there's, thousands and thousands of viral particles coming out that you can then get infected with. But shedding, it's a much smaller amount of particles, but it does happen, and it is well documented, and they pulled the oral polio vaccine for that reason. The chickenpox vaccine, this is coming out. We are having a rise in shingles directly as a result of this. So what was happening before the chickenpox vaccine is everyone was getting chickenpox. Okay, you don't want to get it when you're older. Okay, but when everyone was getting chickenpox, the virus does go dormant in our nerve cell bodies in our central nervous system, so we don't actually get rid of it. It goes dormant. But if there were no chickenpox virus, it would continue to circulate among the children, and then, every time grandma is around, family that have it, her antibodies get boosted. So she's not as likely to get, for it to come out again, because the antibodies are keeping it suppressed. It's only when they get very elderly and the immune system is waning, then the virus can come back out. So because children are getting vaccinated and there's no chickenpox continually going around, then our antibody levels are dropping because we're not getting re-exposed, and then more people are getting shingles. But of course we have a vaccine for that, right? So we're creating problems. We created one problem. We saw one problem creating.
And guess what one of the adverse reactions to the shingles vaccine is? Shingles.
And that's a big push when you're.
Oh, yes.
Oh, Dr. Vella, thank you for the talk and Connie. My daughter just was accepted at Eastern Michigan nursing program, and one of the requirements is the flu vaccine. What's your recommendation?
Oh, she should get a religious exemption. We got to stand up to this flu vaccine. The data's been out there for 10 years that the flu vaccine program has been failing. It is not. There's deaths have not been declining, hospitalizations. This is coming out. So first the COVID fraud. We got to go after the flu vaccine. Well, the whole thing is blowing up right now, I think, as Nathan mentioned at the beginning of the talk. So I think this paradigm is coming down. I think we're on our way out of this. Not that it won't get savage before it's over, but there is war. There is open warfare going on in the health.
When I talked to Connie in Michigan for Vaccine Choice, I think they may have some ideas on that in terms of the exemptions. And some of these universities have been pushing this pretty hard, and it's something that you might be able to.
It is. There's been a gray area. We know what the law is. Going into college, you're allowed a religious exemption for the most part. At a hospital, you're allowed a religious exemption for the most part. Something mysterious and magical happens when a student in college goes in facing clinicals, whether it's nursing or what have you. They're literally teaching the practitioners that there are no religious exemptions. So really it is establishing very firmly that you have a right to an exemption and do that early on in the program and insist on it, insist. I've had hundreds of students and parents of students contact our organization to say their child's graduation, or their adult students, are being held hostage. They won't let them graduate unless they get a tetanus, and it's not a tetanus booster. So whatever it is, like, no, I have a religious, deeply held belief, and, we have to have some brave souls stand up, first of all, and when they do suffer damages, be willing to stand up and maybe file a lawsuit.
Yeah, so the exemption is for all vaccines, not just COVID.
Not just COVID.
It's for all vaccines. So it's a matter of ignorance on the part of the schools, saying that, well, if we let you in, the hospital ain't gonna let you in. Well, you do the same thing at the hospital. I have an exemption, and they've backed off on the COVID vaccine. The opposition to flu vaccine is rising among hospital workers. So this is ramping up a little bit. I know plenty of people who've got their exemption, religious exemption on the flu vaccine, by threatening, I'm leaving or whatever. So it's a matter of, like Connie's saying, people standing up. Lots of times it's bullying, so sometimes, once you state it emphatically and firmly, they will back down, in some cases. But a lot of times you just have to go forward or move on to the next thing or do whatever you can. But MVC is great for the resources to help in these cases.
They're gonna ask you what religion you are. You're a Christian Scientist. That's the religion that they'll accept.
Really?
Honestly, I wouldn't even discuss my religion. So,
I know, but
Yeah.
I was young.
Yeah.
And I just felt bullied, and I knew I didn't want it, and for her, and that's right. I talked to somebody and they said, say this, and I did, and then it just stopped. But I used to have to go every single year
Yeah.
with her, every school year, to get the waiver
yeah.
to the county, whatever.
A good time maybe for one more question.
This is from Mrs. Johnson. This MCIR, it
Micker.
sounds like a Fourth Amendment violation. Has it ever been challenged in that regard?
So the question is, Micker, the Michigan Care Improvement Registry, sounds like a Fourth Amendment violation. Has it been contested as such? Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
I do know that they really push the boundaries with the law in terms of, like I previously stated, privacy, letting you know that getting your permission to put your information in prior to any discussion or any administration, and then allowing you the right to opt out and
That's-
letting you know about that.
Seems to me it should be an opt-in instead of.
Right.
opt-out.
I agree, but children are opted in at birth here in the state of Michigan if you're born in a hospital. But you can opt out. There's if you Google Micker, State of Michigan opt-out form, it's a PDF form that you can fill out, email it in.
You're done.
Yep.
Well, I want to say thank you so much for both Dr. Vella and Connie for all of their hard work. If you have additional questions, let us know. Can we share those slides with folks that are here?
Definitely.
Okay, so make sure you've signed up and we have your emails. And if you want the slides, we'll get those to you. A couple other quick announcements coming up. Next month, Nikki Snyder will be talking about what's coming up in the state and education. And there's a whole bunch of stuff still coming up. The state of Michigan's got some crazy, you guys can see, has got a fair amount of crazy stuff that's going on. And so we want to make sure that you are informed on that. Also, if you want to become members at Wlcpr, we'll keep you informed on that, making decisions. We're also working hard together to have influence in our schools to make sure the Walled Lake School District is moving forward in the right direction in a wonderful way. So please take a look at that, the Wlcpr website. Yes, Kathy?
I want to know, is this available somehow?
It's on YouTube, and we'll send all the links out to it. Yep. So that we live stream this to all over the place, and there were people from other states on there. So yes, we'll send more information out. You may have some other dialogue in that as well. Yes.
Please share that Unvaxxed link written by Robert F. Kennedy, that book. It's a lot of scientific information, but I ask people to If they know a person who's gonna get a vaccine or considering a vaccine for their child, just go to that chapter in the book and just read that chapter on that vaccine before you make a decision. Because nobody's gonna sit down and read a couple hundred pages of scientific information at one time. But it's a free resource.
Thank you again for coming. You guys are wonderful. Thank you.